This week on Head to Head, the true balance of the Force.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars. Begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vancil.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
So we're your hosts for this podcast. So, Daryl, this week Valentine's Day is coming up.
Ah, the love day.
Yeah, the love day. You know, it's funny because I always went long stretches without being in any relationships, and I would always go back and forth on it. Like, on one hand, you know, Valentine's Day would come up, and I'd just be like, oh, this accursed holiday again. Where I got to see all these couples, like, all being in love, and here I am, you know, by myself. But then I would get in relationships, and I'd go, oh, this accursed holiday again.
now I
got to go out and buy gifts and get flowers and do all this stuff. And
right.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts on Valentine's Day?
You sure you want to put this on? No,
Yeah, why not?
I mean, Valentine's Day is, for those who celebrate it, I mean, enjoy it. You know, it's something, it's no different than, to me, it's like Cinco de Mayo. Like, you know, everybody doesn't celebrate it. But,
or St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, but those who choose to indulge in that, have fun with it. If you don't. You know what I mean? It's not really that big of a deal. I think love should be shared, you know, because, of course, you hear, you know, you should love your partner if that's who you're celebrating with, you know, all the time, not just one day.
Yeah, I usually try to lean on that one myself, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah, I mean, and then it's the competition thing, and I think that's what ruins Valentine's Day for people. It's kind of like Christmas, like when people get together on the holidays. Oh, what did you get for Christmas? Instead of like, what did you get for Valentine's Day? And it's like, it's more than just what did you get, but it's like, man, I just enjoy being with
at
my
least
family.
It's legitimate though, because like here in you know, we're based in Michigan, so it's like we're one of the few states that get that stupid Sweetest Day holiday.
You're right.
Which is really totally like marketing gimmicky to me.
Of course.
And I feel the same way. It's kind of like one of those things where, you know, I mean, it's good to actually have a day maybe where we recognize couples and, you know, couples could spend time. But really, I mean, this should be like a year-round thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing your job right and, you know, I mean, I know some people try to break up before Valentine's Day.
Yeah, right?
They don't want to deal with it.
Then reconcile afterwards.
Yeah, it's like, you know what, I'm sorry. But I think, you know, like I said, for those who celebrate it, enjoy it. If you want to take her out to dinner or whatever, cool. You know where guys, propose or, you know, that's what you want to do. Fine. You know, have at it. If you want to just stay at home and watch Netflix, I don't care. I mean, it really, but I think sometimes as you get older, you know, eventually you can, at least to me and the people that I kind of hang out with, you know, it's like, okay, you tell each other happy Valentine's Day, you love them or whatever. And then, you know, you just hang out and just do stuff that you would normally do anyway. Like, it's nothing that I'm about to go all extravagant for. You know, I can understand if it's maybe a new relationship, but if you big guys been together for a while, it's like, man, look, whatever.
Well, you know where Valentine's Day drives most guys, don't you?
Yes, to the Cantina.
All right. Well, here we are. We're in the Cantina.
Yep, I need 4 Long Island.
So what's our first Cantina topic?
Man, the first Cantina topic is Episode 9 title reveal. When will we know the name of this doggone movie?
Actually, that's a good point, because I think that this is the longest time that we've gone without knowing the title of the movie. I mean, just because we don't get the trailers, we always find out the title first.
Right.
So this is different from a trailer discussion, guys.
Yeah, I think they actually don't release them together, if I'm not mistaken.
They probably are at this point. You know, I partially wonder if maybe the title gives away more than
the trailer would.
Well, not necessarily more than the trailer would, but maybe the title in conjunction with the trailers that are... Because, look, they got to release trailers. Well, maybe. I mean, look at Solo, right?
Right.
We didn't get a Solo trailer till like 2 months before the movie was released.
That's because they have to reconstruct it like the lightsaber.
Well, there is that. But, I mean, the thing is that I think that maybe, and I could be wrong again, but the title might actually just reveal stuff that once you start piecing things together through the trailer, So maybe that's one of the reasons why they just want to drop the title. But then again, they've never really shied away from endless speculation before. So I wonder why they're waiting so long to reveal the title.
Yeah. And I hate the fact that they always keep the title. I mean, give us the title, man. Like, it's not that, to me, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Here's a question, though. Do you think that maybe they don't have one?
No,
or at least,
not at this point. I mean, I think if you're shooting the movie, you kind of have to have it at least.
That would be hilarious, though. To kind of like everybody's like, what's the title of the movie? Yeah, we'd like to know, too.
It'd be hilarious if they just called it 9.
Oh, yeah.
We gave it to you.
9.
We gave it to you alone.
Episode 9.
Or just call it The End.
Yeah, right. Well, actually, there was a couple of... I'm trying to remember.
If you want to be clever, you could call it Finn.
Oh. That's bad.
Thank you.
But here's what's funny, though. There was a article out not too long ago. I wish I can remember more of it, where they had a couple, like, somebody claimed to get insider information about what the title was, and there was like 2 or 3 different... I think I actually saw it on Jedi Council. If you guys haven't watched Jedi Council, you should. It's a really good show. Collider Video puts it out. It's on YouTube. They also have a podcast. But I remember they were talking about it on Jedi Council once, where somebody had released a couple of possibilities of what the title could be, and there was one that was actually kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But it's really weird that we don't have a title right now.
Yeah, I never, well, so for Avengers, did we know it was going to be called Endgame?
Yeah.
Like a long time ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, if you're going to call it something, just call it that.
Not what I mean? Like super, super long ago, but
yeah, I mean,
longish. Well, that's another good point, too, is that, Star Wars is held to a slightly different standard than other movies. Like other movies, if you found out the title, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months before the trailer comes out, you wouldn't really think about it. But because it's Star Wars, if we don't hear, we want the title like a year and a half before the movie is released.
Well, I think I'll put it to you this way. Here's how I feel like it should be done. Once principal photography is complete, you should release the title.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's true. Any changes, I mean...
It's still the same movie. You just...
I knew what Shark Night 3D's title was. Had to say it. We talked about that movie last week, guys.
Oh, man.
But, I mean, it's true, though. Like that Shark Night 3D movie, that was one of those examples. I remember how last week we were talking about movie posters and stuff?
Right.
And I brought that movie up. And the funny thing about Shark Night 3D is that movie was advertised. You know how some movies will be advertised like a year and a half before the thing comes out? Mm-hmm. To the point where you're like, this movie hasn't even come out yet. I've been seeing trailers and stuff for, like almost 2 years. That was one of those movies. Then you have other movies where, you just don't really see anything and they just pop up.
Yeah, I think, honestly, maybe... March. I'm going to say March. We should have a title by March.
What would be ultra hilarious, because we taped these shows ahead of time, is if they release the title before we release this episode.
Right, and now we sound stupid.
Completely stupid. So I just want to say...
Right, let's get...
Little disclaimer. All right, because of schedules, this is a production thing. We do have to record these things ahead of time.
Right.
We do reserve the right that this could be a useless discussion, that if the title does come out before this podcast is released, or maybe during the period of it, you can be sure that that's the next podcast, like next week's podcast, will be talking about the title. So give us a break. If you guys are sitting there thinking, like, why are they saying this? They released the title like 3 days ago.
Absolutely. But I think by March, it should be out by March.
Yeah. Because I think you're right. Because you got Star Wars Celebration in April. I think that they're going to, release the first trailer by then. I think we talked about that before. Mm-hmm. So it would make sense. I mean, I guess they could release the title at the same time they do the trailer, but that would be weird.
Yeah, as long as it's nothing stupid like The Return of Jar Jar or something stupid like that, because then no one will see the movie.
Probably not.
Oh, man.
All right, what do we got next?
But to kind of continue with episode 9, what do you think needs to be done to make fans happy again with Star Wars? Episode 9 and beyond.
Well, for starters, give us the title.
Right.
Yeah, I think that if they go back to more of a classic Star Wars feel.
What does that mean for you? I mean, it seems that you were there like when it actually happened.
I mean, if you look at, I mean, let's face it, I guess you can make the argument against the prequels too. But the prequels still, everybody's problem with the prequels really was more the very sterile clinical feel, the wooden acting, a lot of people had issues with the dialogue, things like that. But the stories everybody liked, and the overall presentation was okay. It's just there were those problems
of everything.
Yeah. But it still kind of felt like Star Wars. Whereas, the classic trilogy is what everybody looks at. If you look at the whole Star Wars is fun. Star Wars has like that, basically just like, when George Lucas said, you know what? I want to make a modern day Flash Gordon. And he did. You have this kind of hero's journey style, storytelling technique mixed with, some comedy and a little bit of fun, but it's a particular brand of comedy. It's not like Marvel humor. Star Wars has its own humor. Mm-hmm. The people feel very real. That's the thing that people didn't like about the prequels is that, it's really hard. You had to feel sorry for those actors because they had to sit there and try to act. There's nothing around them. Half the time they're talking to CGI characters too. So it's like, it might be them alone in a green room.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, sell this. So I mean, the environment felt very real, but Star Wars has like a unique feel to it. And the classic trilogy, of course, illustrates this perfectly because even though you have 3 different movies, they had this style, and both in the filmmaking itself, but even just in the overall presentation, even in the overall storytelling. Force Awakens had it too. Now, some people were complaining that it was a little bit too much. Mm-hmm. But I think what happened with The Last Jedi and what people really had a problem with is the fact that you have a movie that didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. It just felt like more of a sci-fi fantasy film. It had some humor in it that really wasn't Star Wars humor. And I don't even necessarily think that the fact that it was darker was a problem. But I think the biggest thing is that everybody probably could have forgiven everything else, but it was the direction that Luke went into that I think was a problem for people. Now, of course, for you and I, we were fine with it. Mm-hmm. But I think in order to make fans happy again, the fans that did not like The Last Jedi need to probably have a movie that concludes in a way that honors the rest of the series, ultimately. And that it just feels like a Star Wars film. And I think there's a good chance they'll get that.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I think Star Wars needs to hit certain beats. I think there's needs to be certain elements that definitely need to be at the forefront of the experience. I think one, of course, we always just great characters. I think the problem that we're having with the new trilogy a little bit is that we can't really, and I sound like Kylo Ren here, but it's like we got to put the past behind us in a way. And I think that's what's holding a lot of people back from Star Wars, because on one hand, like, it was great to have, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and Anthony Daniels, and, come back to reprise their roles. And it does bring back that nostalgia for a lot of people. But I also think is sometimes we're focused on them, and it's sometimes harder to get into the new characters because you kind of almost have to tell the story of what's going on with the old characters, and then you're trying to introduce these new characters into this whole thing. And I think some things have been lost as far as depth of character.
I agree. I think what they should have done, because I was so excited when I found out that all the original actors were going to return.
Yeah.
I think what they should have done was made this trilogy about the old characters and had the newer characters sort of be like side people in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when this trilogy is over, those characters can then...
take over.
So, like you introduce them enough that you care about them, but the problem is that, they were trying to tell two different stories, and it's like, in a way, I guess maybe if it was handled differently, it still would work if you had the original characters being more side characters, but the problem is that they were fighting for prominence.
Yeah. And so I think that's one of the big things. Because I think we could have gotten a lot out of, we focus a lot on Rey, but I think we could have gotten more out of Finn and Poe. Mm-hmm. And even Kylo to some degree.
I actually want to see more of Kylo's story in there. First of all, it was more interesting to me. Second of all, I just think that it was a really fascinating, like his whole story arc was a lot more fascinating.
Yeah, honestly, I would have loved to see more of Kylo. Well, I would have loved to see more of Leia and Han trying to get to Kylo.
Yep.
As opposed to trying to guide Rey through this whole thing. I think that you need great lightsaber duels. I think that's one of the things that people loved about the prequels. It was that the action was a little bit better than the original trilogy. And then I think you need to have memorable dialogue. Like, you and I, we quote the original trilogy like backwards and forwards, like all day in everyday life, And I think just because the dialogue was so memorable and it was so poignant for a lot of different things, where in this one, not so much as far as the trilogy. So I think that if you have that, the story itself and great battles, and then, because like I said, with Rogue One,
I was just about to say, man,
I think
Rogue One did it right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Rogue One did it right as far as battle scenes and things like that. So,
and everything. I mean,
everything.
Every little element about it. I mean, granted, I guess you could say that it would have been nice to delve deeper into the characters, maybe, which of course the novelization does.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as making a Star Wars movie, see, if you want to make a different movie, that was the way to do it. Yeah,
and that's why Rogue One was so successful, because even though you had like Vader and Tarkin in there, like they weren't, like you said last week, that they weren't the focal point of the movie. It was kind of like they were sprinkled in there at the right time, but your focus was on Krennic, Jen, and then her band of merry men that she had around her, Casey and Andor, and K2SO and all the other characters. And I would have loved to even delve more into those guys, like
sure.
Baze and Chirrut, those guys. You can almost do a whole spinoff of them, as far as guarding the Jedi Temple. But I think that's what really needs to make fans happy as far as what Star Wars is concerned, is give us a group of characters that we can focus on and we don't have too much to deal with. It's kind of like what you said even when we have this argument about Batman, about how like Batman Returns had way too many villains, or they start having too many villains to the point where you can't really focus on it. And I think that's kind of what happened with Star Wars, is that they cram too much stuff and it's like trying to get to each point.
That's true. I mean, if you look at the classic trilogy, it's very linear.
Yeah.
It'll switch back and forth between two stories.
Yeah, it's literally like what is Luke doing and what's Han and Leia doing, like, and that's pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, especially in Empire, that's the case. And then, even when you go to Return of the Jedi, even A New Hope, when you look at those, it's kind of like, okay, what's Group A doing? What's Group B doing?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a Group C that affects
like the Empire.
Both. Yeah, like the Empire.
Like, they're the crossover.
Yeah.
Because they affect both parties.
Right. So, I mean, if you get back to that, because the problem that JJ is going to have with Episode 9, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, is you have to try to tie up everything.
Yeah.
You have to answer a bunch of questions.
Yep.
So you got to get that done. You have to. I don't envy that job, and I don't know if there is a way you can make all the fans happy, no matter what you do.
Yeah, you're never going to make, and of course, because the problem is everybody looks at, the original trilogy as the standard, and so like nothing can touch it.
The only way that I think that you could do it, they'll never do this, but if you actually brought George Lucas in to guide the storytelling aspect of it, I think that would probably be one of the ways.
Yeah.
Even though George Lucas himself got, blasted because of the prequels, but nobody blasted him because of the story.
Yeah, they just blasted him because of the directing.
The directing and the writing.
And the look of it.
And the fact that he insisted on doing everything himself. If he had just done the whole thing that he did with like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, I think everybody would have loved the prequels.
Absolutely.
Now people are getting nostalgic for the prequels because of this new trilogy. So it's kind of funny how life works. All right, we're continuing our episode 9 discussion.
Yeah, so if someone does a self-sacrifice in 9, who would you want it to be?
That's a good question. I mean, the obvious choice would be Leia, right?
Yeah.
Because she's,
Carrie Fisher,
in real life, she's passed away. So, I mean, that would be
she's become one with the Force.
Yes. That would be the obvious thing. I mean, if you wanted to take it from, more of a story thing, I mean, I think it could be effective if Kylo did. Another one that would be good would be Lando.
I would say Chewie.
Chewie would be good. Although I don't know if people are emotionally connected enough. I mean, they are.
I think so, just because Chewie's always been...
Well, he did make a self-sacrifice. I mean, I know I keep going back to this, but in that whole, what is it, the new Jedi Order series, that 21 or 22 book series, where the Yuuzhan Vong were the main bad guys. I mean, he basically sacrificed himself, and he allowed himself to get hit with a moon.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty spectacular. A lot of people were up in arms about it. I remember how sad I was. In fact, one of the things that I thought was so great when Disney bought Lucasfilm, and then they said, okay, we're going to throw out all the canon that, well, I mean, the expanded universe was never truly canonized. Mm-hmm. But the idea that they were just going to ignore the stories, period, it's like, oh, Chewie's alive again.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool and kind of exciting for all of us who enjoyed, the material beyond the movies, is that we actually got Chewbacca back. Now, of course, to the average person, he never really died, but in that series of books, Chewbacca was gone. And then in all the subsequent books and comics and everything that were released, no Chewbacca.
Right.
So, yeah, they would definitely care.
Yeah, I think if Chewbacca was the one to make a self-sacrifice, that would kind of be like, okay, the emotional, like what if Kylo killed Chewie or something like that? That would just
make... The new characters, I think Finn would be the most...
Yeah, because he tried it in 8.
Well, yeah, he did. I mean, he's definitely the most obvious for that. I mean, guys, we talked about it in another podcast about how he was just downright suicidal. But I think it would be prominent because he's always been trying to run away from stuff. And at the end of 8, he finally learns to commit to something. So if he actually sacrificed himself,
that would make the most.
Rather than protecting himself by running away or whatever, I think that would be like the saddest thing, because his whole story is kind of tragic anyway when you really stop and think about it.
Yeah. exactly. But he's plucked away from his family, and he's in the Empire, and then never even has a name. I mean,
right.
And then, he finds his people, then, he gets friend zoned by Rey. And
I mean, it just like,
it just the hits keep coming.
Probably what it was. He was going to end his life with that ship because he's like, great, I'm going to be stuck with this Rose chick now. Rey was,
Right.
And then it's over. But it will be interesting because I remember, what was I reading? I was reading some rumors, the latest thing about Episode 9, and they were talking about how Rey and Rose were actually going to be going off on some mission. And then, let me think, it was Finn and Poe, and I think Chewbacca. And something was going to happen, and they were going to run into Lando, like Lando ended up, answering that distress call or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then he somehow gets a Falcon. So, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things. So there is room for Finn to be the one, if that is, in fact, the case.
Yeah.
But, it's true. There's a lot of people who could actually... Hux, maybe?
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's a lot of room for various people to do the whole self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
But the real question is, do you think there will be one?
I think so. I think this movie is going to start off very grim.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about somebody dying. I mean, do you think somebody is going to do a self-sacrifice?
As far as putting themselves just in harm's way, or like actually putting themselves in harm's way and dying?
Or putting themselves in harm's way and dying.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be that self-sacrifice. Like, I think it probably will be... if it does, I mean, like I said, I think it's going to happen more so early in the movie.
No, that makes sense.
That's why I said I think the movie's going to start off very dark. I think it's going to start off grim, and because
the last movie ended pretty dark, if you think about it.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole Resistance is basically on the Falcon now.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is that they're going to, the movie's going to come to a point where it's just like it looks like it's going to be completely hopeless, and then there's going to be a turn of events where our heroes are going to, like, okay, you know what? We found a way. This is what we need to do. And then this is going to be this big climatic, moment at the very end. And of course, our heroes are going to come out on top. So I think it's going to happen, but I think it's going to happen either probably towards the beginning of the movie, first half. So I'm thinking either Leia or Chewie. I think
that could be.
I think that just leaves room because I think...
Well, and don't forget that they're going to do that whole thing with Carrie Fisher and use, other scenes from stuff. Now, I don't know if that would be really relevant in the beginning of the movie or not. So in order for Leia, like you said, to actually do a self-sacrifice at the beginning of the movie, they would actually have to do it... They would actually have to have all of her scenes or whatever occur then. Now, it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because... The weird thing about them using unused footage from 7 and 8 is the fact that when we last see her, she's on the Millennium Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
So she's on the Falcon. Unless they have there's no way I don't see them making that work.
Well, I think that probably what Leia, I think is if it is Leia, it's probably to something like, okay, there's some mission where she's like, no, I need to go. I need to see this through and make sure.
And then find out she's dead or something.
And then she's like, okay, well, look, we'll get Leia out of there. And she's like, almost do a whole, what's her face? Lorna Doone's character.
Holdo.
Admiral Holdo. Yeah, pull a Holdo move and just like, okay, get everybody off the ship. She's going to pilot that Joker into something because she's the ultimate test of a leader. Is like, I'm going to put myself before, I'm going to put the safety of everybody else before myself.
Oh, and that would definitely be like an emotional point for Poe, too.
Exactly, and it just shows him like, okay, this is how you lead, and it's one of those type of situations. So I think if they were going to do it, that's how it will be done. And Because like Poe and Leia's relationship kind of reminds me of M and James Bond, like Judi Dench's M.
Yeah.
And
oh,
Bond.
Absolutely.
Like,
actually, that's a really, really good analogy too, because
their relationship
totally is like that.
They're like, they respect each other definitely, and she's kind of like a mom to him.
And he's somewhat rebellious in a lot of ways. Like sometimes he'll listen to her, but a lot of times he blows her off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, then when he finally realizes, like, what everything that she's been trying to teach him to be, I think that's what's really going to set Poe on that path. Because I believe that's the reason why all the original cast were called back, is to set these characters on their path to kind of almost replace them. Mm-hmm. So I think Poe was supposed to be the leader of the new resistance, and that's his place, and he had to learn from Leia how to do that. And I think, Finn may be kind of half Han Solo, half Lando. I think Rey is going to be like the new Luke, and then of course Kylo is trying to be like his own version of Vader, and I think that's just kind of where everybody's going. And I think that's going to be the ultimate the sacrifices. It's probably going to be Leia or Chewie, because then you have a clean slate. Now to move forward.
It would make the most sense out of at least anybody we're presented with. But what about you guys? What do you think are going to be? In fact, we've given you guys a lot of stuff because we didn't really ask what they thought about any of these other topics. So the episode 9 title reveal. When do you guys think we're going to know? What needs to happen to make you guys happy?
Yeah, for Star Wars.
Right. And who do you think will have a self-sacrifice in episode 9? Let us know. Hit us up in the comments section, or, go to our Twitter or Facebook at head-to-head-SW. All right, what do we got next? We're going to leave the cantina now, finish up that drink.
Yeah.
Don't spill it.
It's a violation.
Right.
Next, we have Duel of the Fates. So for Duel of the Fates, so far, and we already talked about the prequels earlier. So far,
this is going to be an interesting discussion, because we just bashed both the prequels and the sequels, and now.
Yep. So far, do you prefer the prequels, not including Rogue One, or the sequels?
Yeah, because the sequels would only be Force Awakens and Last Jedi.
Right.
That's difficult. That's actually a more difficult question to answer than. Maybe for some people it would be easy, but my issue is, okay, we all know what the problems are with the prequels, and we also know that there are some issues with the sequels. So I'm going to try to ignore those for a minute.
Okay.
Because the prequels, the thing that I like about that is it's dealing with characters with whom we're already familiar, but we get a lot more meat about them. We get a lot more backstory. We learn a little bit about, say, Emperor Palpatine in 4, 5, and 6, but then you get to go back to the prequels and you really get to see, well, how did this guy rise to power? And, who was he? And we learned so much about his character. Same thing with Darth Vader, when he found out, okay, he's Anakin Skywalker. Well, we know he's Luke's father, but, well, now we really get to see, how did Obi-Wan rise up to the Jedi ranks? What was Yoda like when he was a little younger? And these are all the things that the prequels... So what the prequels did was they actually gave us a lot more about characters that we already loved, and it really enriched the whole universe that we already fell in love with when we watched the classic trilogy. And then you have the sequels, and the sequels, of course, tell us what's next. Because the one thing that the prequels were missing was Han, Luke, and Leia. And now we actually, in the sequels, get to see, well, what happened after, the Nub Yub song or whatever on, that the Ewoks were singing. Of course, that was changed for the special editions, but, you get this whole Ewok celebration, and the whole galaxy is celebrating the fall of the Empire. So what happened to Luke, Leia, and Han after that? And now we get to find that out. Now, it may not have gone the way that a lot of us had hoped it would go, because I personally was hoping more for like the Timothy Zahn version. That they never split apart, that Han and Leia were still together. Luke was opening his Jedi Academy, and, you know, we were going to get further threats to this new Republic, and Han, Luke, and Leia would be together fighting that. So I would say that I prefer the prequels for the story aspect of it, because the prequels fulfilled my expectations and desires for the story. But I think in a lot of ways, the sequels are a little bit more interesting, and they're exploring all these different areas, and they're giving us a really, really unique version of our heroes that we loved from the classic trilogy, introducing us to really cool new characters, which the prequels did too, but I don't know, it's tough. Because so far, all I've done is made an argument for...
I'm just waiting for you to pick a side.
Well, you know what? All right. I'm going to go with the prequels. I'm going to go with the prequels because there's more characters in the prequels that I loved. And if I'm honest, rewatchability, I usually will watch the prequels more than I've watched the sequels. In fact... You know, when Force Awakens, The Last Jedi in particular, Solo, I still don't even own Solo yet. You know, now granted, technically it's not one of the sequel trilogies, but it took me a while. Where the prequels, man, I was a day one buyer. Well, I don't love Star Wars any less. So I think that as much as I do love the sequel trilogy, I'm probably going to have to go with the prequels.
Okay.
What say you, sir?
Oh, prequels.
Prequels right, so for me. We're in.
Prequels for me, and the reason being is outside of the CG, the overuse of CG, and Jar Jar Binks, I'm good with you know. If they didn't have Jar Jar, I'd be fine. But I think that all of them are great, just because. Oh no, midichlorian thing, yeah, that's got to go too. But I think they were great stories, like you said. I think they were great stories. They gave us great characters when need be, and it explained a lot. And it answered a lot of age-old questions for us that we had, for at least for me growing up, and I know for you all growing up when it actually happened. And that's, you know, like you've always wanted to see Yoda and Palpatine go at it. You've always wanted to see, like, okay, like it gave me one of the greatest lightsaber duels between Anakin and Obi-Wan. You know, it gave me Darth Maul. It gave me...
Don't forget Mace. Mace was
Mace Windu. Yeah, they're coolest characters. You know, it showed me kind of like, okay, how this whole empire started, and
that's what I mean. It totally enriched the whole
it just enriched
saga.
Everything for me, and it's like, okay, now everything makes sense. And even with the culmination of finally seeing Vader become Vader, it's like, oh, like that was like the icing on the cake, and could have been done even better, sure. But it was still good, you know.
Well, I mean, going back to what you had said, even in the Cantina segment, when it was like, well, what needs to happen to make fans happy? One of your answers was there's certain beats that it has to hit. There's certain elements that it has to have. Well, everything that you had mentioned, from the lightsaber duels to all that, the prequels had that.
Exactly.
The sequels are lacking it, actually.
Yeah, and that's why I think a lot of fans are disappointed in it, because I think we lost the opportunity to take the best of both worlds, see what both did excellent, and just keep out, like, okay, why didn't fans like certain things about the prequels? Oh, okay, no more CG. And that's what I loved about the sequels, is that it returned to real practical worlds and practical effects. I love that. it brought back better dialogue. It brought back some characters, like Yoda. You know, that whole like the whole tree scene still is like one of my favorite.
Oh yeah.
You know, and Last Jedi, and then of course, even Huck's whole speech, man, it was just like that was.
Well, and I think that that's the thing that where the sequels. It's like I said before, it's kind of a mixed bag with me because the things that I love about the sequels, I love.
Yeah.
I love the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I love Kylo Ren. I love Hux. I love
Maz, man. Like
Maz is cool. I mean, I think Poe, at first I was kind of lukewarm on him, but I grew to really love him as a character. Finn is like a really refreshing character that I think is very much in the spirit of Star Wars. But I think the problem I have is they have all the ingredients are there. I just think they could have been mixed a little bit better. I think a better story could have been told with it, and I think that they could have done more. I don't necessarily have a problem with the characters, though. You could keep them, just put them in a different situation.
I think there was a lot of in the martial arts world, even, you know, we call it wasted movement. And there was a lot of wasted movement to me. Especially like the Canto Bite scene, wasted movement. The whole DJ, I mean, that's part of the Canto Bite thing, but
well, see, that's another thing. I actually like the character of DJ. I just think that he was used incorrectly.
It was, I mean, the ideal of him.
He could have been the next Lando Calrissian.
Could have been. Or
that's the problem. Yeah. Or look at Phasma. Phasma was just criminally wasted. So you want to talk about wasted movement?
Yeah, that
was
like
no movement.
Yeah, that's exactly. You know, those are things that, you know, you're just like, okay, what are you here for? What was that? What was the point?
Well, the problem I think that the sequels have is the fact that they were trying this new direction where they give each director the chance to do their own Star Wars thing. Mm-hmm. But it didn't seem like anybody discussed, well, what's the point? What's the whole overall arc? Yeah, it's more like a choose your own adventure.
Yeah, and I think like what you said, if they would have said, okay, look, this is where we are. This is how we're going to start. This is how we end. Mm-hmm. Your stories need to fill it in here.
Yeah, you need to. So for episode 8, you need to get us here, and then, you know. Mm-hmm. So 7 has to get us to this point, and 8 has to get us to this point.
Yeah, we have to have markers here.
Yeah. If they had done that, I think it would have been, I think cohesion is the main problem with the sequels.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that if you fix that, you probably would have fixed everything else. Because even all these other things that we're talking about, I think would have been fixed, which is why I honestly think that the most watchable movie, like as far as, you know, rewatching, is still Rogue One.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's like, okay, that's the template that they should have followed for all the movies. I think Rogue One actually does Star Wars better, even though it lacks an opening crawl. They purposely try to make it feel different from the saga films.
And it totally did.
And yet, it's probably the most... It feels different, but it still feels like a Star Wars movie. Yeah. That's where it was successful.
Yep. Absolutely. All right.
Well, I guess, last week we agreed. This week we agreed. I guess we're going to have to...
Getting along, man.
I know. It's kind of nice, but...
It was like that Valentine's thing, but, you know, we're going to break up after.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what about you guys? What do you guys think? You like the prequels better? You like the sequels better? Are you guys kind of like, forget both of them? I'm a classic trilogy guy. You know, but you can't say the classic trilogy because, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody knows that's the best one. Which do you guys prefer, the prequels or sequels? Let us know. Let us know in the comments section. You know, hit us up at Head to Head SW on either Facebook or Twitter. We really want to hear from you guys. All right, what's next?
Yes, indeed. So next we have From a Certain Point of View.
This is kind of an esoteric little topic that we have today.
Well, we'll see. So today's for a certain point of view, we're going to talk about the true balance of the Force. Now, excuse me. So I was thinking, I happened to be watching Last Jedi, and you know, a lot of people we all have our speculations about the scene where Luke, kind of disappears and becomes one with the Force.
Yeah, his little, what I like to call the golden child scene.
Right. So, and you and I talked about this actually on the last podcast about the whole Force Ghost thing about Obi-Wan.
Well, that's actually been kind of a running thread in a lot of our podcast. We were talking about Luke's power. I mean, this is just, we've talked about this scene and Force Ghosts and a lot of things. So that's why this is an interesting little topic.
Well, yeah, because
go on.
I'm wondering this. Did Luke willingly give himself or decide to go away because if he would have stayed alive, it would have made the Force out of balance?
So basically what you're talking about is because you have Rey and Kylo is almost like his presence throwing the Force out of balance, and he needs to go away in order for the Force to be back into balance.
Exactly.
Yeah. I often wonder, too, like, when you look at the original prophecy, like, okay, he's going to bring balance to the Force, talking about Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem with that is that if Anakin had remained a Jedi and he had vanquished any dark side opponents, if the lack of any dark side brings balance to the Force, then that's a little bit different than what's being implied in this new trilogy, because the new trilogy is basically telling us that light and dark have to sort of be equaled out and kept kind of in balance. And then if one of them gets too powerful...
Well, that's the thing, because if you remember back to the Clone War cartoon, you had the father and then you had the son and the daughter.
Right.
And that was kind of showing you like, okay, you have to have good and evil in order to have
and the idea is one of them killed the other one, and then that was like, and I mean, I get that. But see, the thing is, though, is that you almost would have to figure out how cool would it be if we could get George Lucas to do a podcast with us? Because that would be...
I got his number. I'll call him.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, we'd be getting a lot of listeners then.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, the thing that's funny about it, though, is that it all goes back to whatever his original vision of this was, and then how it's morphed. Because, and once again, you want to talk about what would have to happen to make fans happy, it's that cohesion again. It's like, okay, you have to decide, first of all, whether or not, moving forward, are we going to go with George Lucas's original vision of what, let's just say, balance in the Force really is? Or are we going to decide, you know what, let's modify this for a new generation of storytellers and redefine it?
Well, like I said, with George, he was part of the Clone Wars.
He was, but the thing is that his whole thing wasn't... It was weird because George actually started to get these really radical ideas himself. Because if you even look at, you start reading about what George's original idea was for 7, 8, and 9, they're pretty out there, man.
Sure.
You got to remember that George Lucas is an independent filmmaker, and he kind of has that whole art house film vibe. It's actually amazing that he even created the original trilogy.
Avant-garde type.
Yeah, because his stuff is usually very avant-garde and really strange. And the fact that he was able to rein that in for 3 movies, I mean, I would say 6, but the thing is that he started to get a little out there with the prequels, and then the Clone Wars, he started even stretching it further.
Yeah, I mean, but I like the concept, though. I like the concept of, like, because if you look at saying, okay, well, the prophecy of one who would bring balance to the Force, and it's kind of like, well...
But how is he bringing balance to the Force, though? It's kind of like if there has to be good and evil...
Right, but there's one who actually, and I think that's what we talked about before, about the Jedi, and I think Kylo was even trying to hint at it a little bit when he's like, let's get rid of the Jedi, let's get rid of the Sith, let's just do our own thing. Let's just...
Yeah, but doing their own thing doesn't necessarily mean... I mean, granted, you're getting rid of the two extremes, but you would almost have to be like the Bindu if you really want to truly be like right there in the dead center.
Yeah, but I think there's this... And I think that's where ultimately you have balance. Is that, you know, you can't be all the way saintly and you can't be all the way hellish.
Well, then
so
by that
it's like...
logic, you would have to actually... Luke needed to kill Rey and kill Kylo and then remain, because Luke was the one that was truly in balance, if you really want to stop and think about it. He was the one that wasn't really overly good or overly bad either. He was kind of in the middle. It was sort of like he learned the mistakes of the Jedi and the Sith, and he was starting to study that gray area.
Yeah, but I think even if that were the case... He may have. I don't think he would have survived long enough. I mean, because like once he died, then what happens?
Well, the Force would. I mean, that's where Broom Kid and that whole scene comes into play, where it's kind of like
set itself, and that
you know, everybody. I mean, it's like the Force is all around. It binds living things. You know, it's kind of like one of those things where, I mean, I think it makes the most sense that you're going to have the light side and the dark side of the Force. And as long as the usage of that and just the overall influence, I think that's the best way to put it, is the influence that it has in the galaxy. Mm-hmm. Once one side has more influence in the galaxy at large than the other, that's when things seem to...
be out of balance.
Yeah, be out of balance. Because if you think about it, when the light side actually has... Now all the darkness, like these dark side guys are trying to like rise up, and it's almost like it's like a boiling pot almost. You know, the water's no longer still; it's kind of churning around.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think if by Luke going away, it allows Rey, for him to train Rey to how to be in balance, so he can train others to be in balance.
Right, and then what could happen is that Rey can then defeat Kylo, and then all you have left is these people that are just sort of even keel, balanced in the Force.
Exactly.
That's possible.
Exactly. And that's what I'm wondering. Like, I was kind of just sitting there kind of thinking about it, like, you know. But
I don't know. I don't really think that it doesn't really necessarily match Luke's actions, because on one hand, if you think about it, Luke had to be pretty much super coerced to even train her in the first place. If Luke really wanted to get this kind of balance in the Force, it seems to me like he would have been seeking somebody out to train, so that way he could just disappear. And
well, you remember, he was too consumed with his own guilt.
True.
To see that. That's why Yoda had to show up, and I think that's what made him ultimately...
So you're saying that's the turning point. It's like, okay, fine, I'll go train Rey.
Because
so
like,
episode 9 is really where this is going to happen. Then.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking, because it's like, you know, when Yoda said, he said, well, I'm going to burn this tree down, and Yoda just like, I'll do it for you. And then then Luke got all sentimental, like, but the text. And then he's like... But you were going to burn this thing down anyways. Like, were you going to keep the books and kill the tree? I mean, it's like, you got to think, like, Luke is kind of acting irrational. And I think that's where Yoda was trying to put him back and saying, like, look, you know, you have to teach them, yeah, these are the things. He's like, yeah, the books, the Jedi texts, yeah, they're great stories, but they weren't page turners, as he said.
Well, you know,
and you got to just kind of...
The rumors that Hayden Christensen's going to come back as Anakin is, you know, or they're heating up again. Yeah. And that would actually be interesting. I mean, again, I thought that it would be cool, and I think we discussed this on one of the podcasts too, whereas if Kylo had found a Sith holocron and it was Palpatine, which that's still a rumor too.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if you have these two titans of the Force of yesteryear, Luke and Anakin, and they're each... I don't think I could accept it if Anakin went bad, though. Like, if he were trying to influence Kylo to the dark side type of thing.
No, I think...
It would make more sense if Anakin was also appearing to Rey.
Well, honestly, I think it should just be Luke. I think the only person who should appear to... Honestly, I think the Anakin thing is...
Well, it could happen only because you have to remember Rey's vision. You know, that's another thing that bugged me about The Last Jedi was that you put this whole thing about her having this vision. Now, granted, you could say it's a catalyst for her to want to go seek out Luke.
Which was, are you talking about? Oh, the Force Awakens. Oh, yeah, that one.
The big vision. The one where she, like, everybody was appearing in that thing.
Yeah, like you heard Obi-Wan's voice, Yoda.
Obi-Wan, Yoda. But the main thing, though, too, was that she was looking at Luke's basically Bespin duel with Vader.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere in there, you could say that Anakin's coming into that. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with the fact that whatever this reawakening of the Force is, it's sort of putting the band back together, so to speak. Like all these Force users are just, it's not even generational. And that would actually tie in with Filoni's Rebels thing. What was that? Oh, I can't believe I can't think of it now. That crazy interdimensional thing where there was...
Oh, you're talking about when they... Yeah. When
going to those different portals.
Portals, yeah. And they were... Yeah. That was cool. It was weird.
That stupid fan keeps coming on all the time, and it's driving me insane. Usually, guys, we turn the heat down in here like low enough so that way the fan never comes on. So if you guys are hearing any fan noise, I apologize, but so be it. But yeah, whatever that interdimensional thing was, there's a name for it. I keep forgetting what it is.
It's like some weird, like, Phantom Zone almost.
Yeah, whereas... And that's the thing, is that the whole idea of the saga really tying together and it not being these individual little time periods is what we think it is, seems like it's being set up in more and more, you know, beyond the movies, like, you know, just the other canon material, like comics and books and
yeah, I mean,
TV shows and stuff.
I don't know. I mean, I just think that, you know, with the Force, it's being what it is. I think it's always... You know, and even they always said the Force is always changing, too. But I just think that in order to really have that balance, you know, you really have to embrace both sides of the equation. And I think that's where Ahsoka was kind of going to. I think that's where Yoda was trying to lead Luke to, was this saying that, you know, you gotta teach him your failures. You know, that's a part of you. That's a part of learning. That's a part of, you know, the whole process. And I think that makes you more well-rounded and you're not so fixated on, I have to be perfect or I have to be because the book said this. It's like you learn from experience and your experience is what teaches you things. And you're going to have good experiences. You're going to have bad experiences. And you're going to do some things that are not quote unquote good, but you learn from that. And that's what ultimately balances you out in life is your experiences. And I think that's where Yoda is really trying to get Luke to understand. And I think that's what he said. Rey has all that she needs already. Like, she has the text already, but I think she has all that she needs as far as the people around her and her own experiences to kind of show her, like, look, you don't have to be all the way here, all the way here. You can just chill and be in the middle.
Well, I'm sure episode 9 is going to answer a lot of that. So we'll just have to see. So let us know what you guys think. You know, are we like way out there? Is this a little too metaphysical? Or what do you guys think the true balance of the Force truly is?
I think I had some death sticks in the cantina, so that might be why I'm all esoterical.
Is it Luke? Is the broom kid? Is he the balance?
Or is it even one person?
Yeah, or is it even a person? Is it more like a group? Is it, you know, what do you guys think it is?
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. What is the true balance? How does the Force actually maintain its balance? That's the better question. Yep. Actually, that's probably how we should have titled this thing. All right, well, that's it from a certain point of view. Now it is time for one of my favorite segments.
I probably need to do this.
That's right. Clear your mind. That's right. This is where we take questions from you guys. We got some good ones.
All right. Up to bat, we have Josh Miken. His question is, have we seen the last of DJ? DJ is the character from episode 8.
Yeah, the one we were just talking about not too long ago.
Yep. He said,
Benicio del Toro played him.
Yep. The stuttering guy.
Yeah.
I have a bad feeling that... Oh, he did not say I have a bad feeling. I have a bad feeling that he will return in episode 9 in a bigger role.
Oh, so not a fan of DJ, I see.
Well, I'm not, no.
No, I know you're not.
Well, him.
Well,
yeah.
neither is Josh apparently. I don't actually think we're gonna really see him.
I hope not, unless it's something quick. Just because I think we have too much ground. Like I said, we have too much ground to cover. We can't waste movement.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. And he's so minor. I mean, he was barely even in
8. Yeah.
Yeah, he was even barely in 8. So it's like, I just don't. And not to mention, you have to remember, you got other guys like Richard E. Grant's going to be in episode 9. You have, who else did they say? There's like all these actors that are going to be in 9. So I just can't honestly see. I mean, I'm looking at the cast list now, actually. And I don't see Benicio del Toro's name.
That's good.
So I'm thinking he has.
Well, the actor, I just didn't like his character.
I think there's zero chance, actually, that we're going to see.
Yeah, especially since principal photography is already completed.
Yeah, it's been completed, and, there hasn't been any mention of him. I don't think you have to worry about seeing him having a bigger role. I don't think you have to worry about seeing any role.
Yes.
So I think you're good. You have seen the last of DJ. All right, who do we got next?
Next, we have Samir Muhammad. He would like to know, we know that Rey wants the Jedi back, but Kylo wants to do away with the Sith. Do you think he will have a change of heart?
A change of heart about...
I guess wanting the Sith back, like actually...
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. Like, does he want to have the Sith back?
Yeah. Because, in 8, he said, let's do away with it all. But do you think he's eventually going to be like, maybe we should bring it back?
Well, I mean, that depends. I mean, because if you think about it, it's like, yeah, the guy did worship Vader, right? So it's like maybe he was just tired of Snoke, like, making him try to live up to Vader's shadow, and he just was finally like, you know what? Forget it. Almost like a rebellious teenager kind of thing. Like, I hate all of you.
Right.
And maybe later on he'll want to do that. It did seem kind of final, though, that he wanted to just do away with everything and do his own thing, though.
But if he finds a Sith holocron, especially if he hears from Palpatine or something like that.
That's it, right.
That might be the thing that changes the tide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could be there. I could see him wanting to bring the Sith back if he thinks that bringing the Sith back will achieve whatever it is he ultimately wants to achieve, or whatever he finds out, like you said, through the holocrons, like, oh, well, I got this whole thing wrong. I guess I should be doing B instead of A or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it is going to be interesting. I mean, I personally hope we don't see the last of the Sith, because as much as they're mentioned, as much as we see them, I still think they were underused in the whole saga.
Yeah.
You don't really... It's more Jedi heavy than Sith heavy.
Right.
And I think that the Sith and the whole background of that, there's a lot of stories there.
Maybe Kylo decides to kind of rebel against the Sith format and try to create like a Sith order, like a Jedi council. But just with
there could either
Sith.
be that, or
like the Knights of Ren, take the Knights of Ren and just
and just make them like a new type of Sith, and just forget the rule of two and all that stuff. And I mean, there could be another situation too where he tries to rebuild it. There could also be another situation where this mysterious other apprentice that Snoke had, maybe he pops up. Maybe he's a Sith.
Great, another character we got to...
Yeah, right? Well, we know it's not DJ.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, it could be that maybe this new guy comes along and he wants to rebuild the Sith, and so he wants to defeat Kylo. And, I mean, there just could be all kinds of possibilities. I personally don't think we've seen the last of the Sith. At least I hope not.
Yeah, me either. I kind of like them. But I think, it would be cool if they could actually really decide to... I honestly, I would love the Knights of Ren thing if they actually really decide to make them...
Well, that's the thing that I always thought was the coolest thing about The Force Awakens. Like, this Knights of Ren thing is kind of interesting. Let me see more of that.
And I think, like I said, I think they're really going to have a bigger role in this movie.
Well, there is another rumor going around So, of course, we know that the Knights of Ren are supposed to be featured and all that. But there's one rumor that's going around where it's a Kylo redemption thing, where what happens is that something happens where the Knights of Ren, like Kylo ends up turning, and then he has to help Rey defeat the Knights of Ren. Even though, in my opinion, that would be fairly simple. I mean, if Kylo's leading these guys, he's conceivably more powerful than they are. He could probably defeat them on his own.
Well, numbers, sheer numbers of it all.
That didn't seem to bother Vader much.
He's no Vader. That's
no, but he's not exactly like, he's not a wuss either, though.
No.
I mean, this guy did have some force powers that we hadn't seen before, like stopping, laser bolts in midair and doing some stuff. I mean, I think Kylo's actually a lot more powerful than what people think. It's just...
I think he's more powerful than what he thinks.
Well, more probably. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that. But it just... because he's so unstable and
he's unfocused.
Yeah, he's unfocused. I think that... And, where the story has gone... That's where I applaud everybody, is that they haven't gone for cheap story devices, where they go, no, we don't need to see this yet because the story is going here. So there's a lot of things that, I think that Kylo is capable of that we just don't honestly know because we haven't had to see for the story.
Yep.
Well, we'll see, I guess.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for our show today, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. Well, remember... follow us on, on Twitter, on Facebook. Click subscribe on the YouTube page.
Hit that bell.
Yeah, hit that bell so you guys are notified when we have a new episode.
And definitely leave your comments on our YouTube page. We greatly appreciate it.
Yes. Comments on the YouTube page at HeadToHeadSW for our Twitter and Facebook. It's going to do it for our show today. I am Eric Vancil.
I'm Daryl Saunders.
And may the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.